Welcome to True Haunting Log, where real people meet real darkness. Every story you hear here is based on true events, documented, remembered, and retold by those who survived. Tonight's story is about a house that does not just creak or whisper, it screams. This is the terrifying case of the Screaming House of Union, Missouri, and the man who tried to protect his children from something he could not see and could not fight. If you are listening to this in the dark, maybe do one simple thing. Check your doors. Look behind you. And then, don't look too long into any shadow in the corner of your room. Because in a small town in Missouri, a man named Steven LaChance discovered that sometimes the shadow looks back. This is his story, told from the outside, but born from the deepest part of his fear. In May 2001, in the quiet town of Union, Missouri, a single father named Steven LaChance was desperate for a new start. He had 3 children, 1 daughter and 2 sons. He had just come through a painful divorce. Money was tight. Life was heavy. They were living in a small, cramped apartment that felt more like a box than a home. The kids had little space to play. There was no yard, no porch, no sense of peace. So when Steven heard about a big old rental house on a quiet street in town, with rent that was almost too good to be true, something inside him jumped. He drove there with his eldest daughter. The house was white, with a wide front porch that seemed to welcome them in. It had 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, high ceilings, and the kind of old-world charm you only see in houses built in another time. To Steven, it looked like hope. They stepped through the front door, and the first thing they noticed was the smell. Not dust, not mold, but the warm, cozy smell of baking cookies. Sunlight poured in through stained glass windows, painting patches of red, blue, and gold on the wooden floor. The living room had ornate wooden trim. Along the ceiling, small cherub carvings watched silently from the corners, little stone angels frozen in time. Steven's daughter turned slowly, taking it all in. Her eyes shone. After the pain of the last few years, this place felt unreal. It felt like an answer, like something good finally breaking through the bad. She smiled up at her father, and he could see something in her face he had not seen in a long time. Relief. Excitement. The feeling of finally having room to breathe. They walked from room to room, 3 bedrooms, large kitchen, a basement, plenty of space for everyone. No more cramped apartment, no more kids sharing tiny corners. This felt like a dream. Steven did not ask many questions. He did not wonder too long why a big, beautiful house like this had such an affordable rent. At that moment, he only knew one thing. They needed it. He signed the lease. Right there, right then. He believed he was giving his family a fresh start. He did not know that he had just signed them into a nightmare. Some houses are built with wood and brick and nails. Others are built with secrets. This one had both. The day they moved in, the usual chaos filled the air. Boxes everywhere, kids running through the rooms, arguments over who got which bedroom. Laughter echoed down the hallways, and for a while, the house sounded like any other family home. But even while everyone was busy, small details started to disturb Steven. He noticed the bedroom doors first. Every bedroom door had a metal hook and eye latch, not on the inside, on the outside. He paused at his daughter's room. His hand rested on the latch. Why would you need to lock a bedroom door from the hallway? He imagined someone standing out there in the dark, closing the latch and trapping someone inside. The thought made his skin crawl. He tried to laugh it off. Maybe the previous owners had kids who sleepwalked. Maybe they used the latches for safety. Maybe there was some simple explanation. He told himself that old houses always had strange quirks. That was part of their charm. He let go of the latch and went back to work, but the image stayed with him, those little hooks, those old metal eyes, ready to lock someone in. Outside, the neighborhood looked friendly enough. People walked their dogs. Teenagers rode bikes. A few neighbors waved as they passed by. But even out there, something felt off. As the day went on, Steven noticed that people walking down his side of the street kept doing the same strange thing. They would be moving along casually, talking, laughing, pushing strollers, and walking dogs. Then they would approach the property line in front of his new house, and almost every single one of them would cross the street. They stepped off the sidewalk on his side and moved to the other side to pass the house from a distance. Some of them looked at the house quickly and then looked away, as if it hurt to stare too long. Some quickened their pace. At one point, a car slowed down in front of the house. A man leaned out of the window and called, "Hope you get along okay there." It sounded like a joke, but the tone behind it carried something else. Warning. Then the car sped off. Steven chuckled weakly and told himself that small towns always had weird superstitions. Maybe the house just had a reputation. Maybe people thought it was spooky because it was old. He did not want to believe there was more to it. But somewhere deep inside, a small cold knot formed in his stomach. He did not know why, but the house did not feel entirely right. When a whole street quietly walks around one house, there is usually a reason. He just did not know it yet. The first 2 nights seemed almost normal. The family was so tired from moving that everyone fell into bed quickly. They slept hard. There were no screams, no footsteps, no cold spots. For a brief moment, it felt like he might have overthought everything. On the 3rd day, Steven decided to hang a framed painting of angels in the living room. His daughter had chosen it because it matched the cherub carvings on the ceiling. He measured the wall carefully, placed the nail, hung the frame. It looked perfect. The angels watched over the room. He stepped back, satisfied. Then, without warning, the frame leapt from the wall. It crashed to the floor with a loud smash, glass shattering across the hardwood. Steven flinched. His heart slammed in his chest. He sighed, annoyed, and checked the nail. It was still firmly in place. He picked up the frame, cleaned the broken glass, and tried again with a new nail. Once more, careful hands, careful measurements. He hung the frame, let go. For a second, it stayed. Then, it fell again, hard. The crash echoed through the room. Now irritation mixed with a strange, prickling unease. But he was stubborn. He grabbed the frame a third time, hung it once more. This time, as he stepped back, he muttered quietly, "Stay there, damn it." He stared at the picture, waiting. The frame did not move. It stayed. The room went silent. He laughed at himself, shaking his head, talking to a wall, talking to a painting. He told himself it was just a loose nail, just old plaster, just gravity. But somewhere in the unseen corners of that living room, something heard him. Something listened. Have you ever spoken into an empty room and felt like the room was paying attention? Sometimes you're not imagining it. While Steven tried to focus on unpacking and work, the kids explored their new world. They played on the porch. They watched cars go by. They pointed at dogs and bicycles and neighbors. One afternoon, his eldest daughter called out to him, "Dad, come here. You have to see this." He joined her on the porch. She spoke in a low voice. "Just watch the people," she said. An elderly man was walking slowly down their side of the street, tapping his cane on the concrete. As he neared the LaChance house, he glanced up at it. His body stiffened. Then, almost immediately, he stepped off the curb, crossed the street, and continued on the other sidewalk. He did not look back. A jogger came next. She ran lightly on the pavement, ponytail bouncing. As she reached the invisible line where their property began, her eyes shifted quickly toward the house. Her face changed. Her pace picked up, and she crossed to the opposite side without breaking stride. A woman pushing a stroller did the same. A teenager with headphones did the same. A man walking his dog, the same. Almost everyone avoided passing directly in front of the house. Those who did risk a glance at it quickly turned their heads away, like people shielding their eyes from something too bright or too dark. Steven watched this for almost an hour. With each person who crossed the street, that cold knot inside him grew tighter. His daughter looked up at him. "They're scared of our house, aren't they?" she asked quietly. He forced a chuckle. "Maybe they're just used to walking over there," he said. "Maybe it's just a habit." But he did not believe his own words. He could not shake the idea that the house was like a dark rock in the middle of a clear stream, and everyone's instincts told them to flow around it. When the world around you acts like something is dangerous, you should listen. Steven didn't. Not yet. The days passed. They unpacked more boxes. The kids picked their beds. Life tried to settle into something normal. But the house felt tense, like someone holding their breath. On a warm Sunday afternoon, Steven was mowing the lawn in the backyard. The air was hot. The sun beat down. He wiped sweat from his forehead and decided he needed the garden hose. He called to the back door to his youngest son. "Hey, can you run down to the basement and bring up the hose for me?" The little boy nodded and disappeared inside. A few moments later, the peace was shattered. A piercing scream tore through the house. It wasn't just a scared shout, it was pure terror, the kind of sound that hits a parent in the heart. Steven dropped what he was doing and sprinted inside. He found his son in the kitchen, standing frozen, trembling violently. The boy had wet himself. A small puddle spread beneath his shoes. His eyes were huge, wild, full of panic. Something chased me up the basement steps, he sobbed. Steven's heart pounded in his chest. He grabbed a baseball bat and moved toward the basement door. His 2 older children stood behind him, afraid to get too close. He opened the door and stared down into the darkness below. Step by step, he descended into the basement. The temperature dropped slightly. The air felt damp. Old stone walls surrounded him. He looked around. The garden hose lay on the floor, exactly where his son must have dropped it. There were pipes, shadows, and rough concrete. But no person, no animal, no obvious thing that could have chased a child up the stairs. Still, he searched. He looked behind the furnace, along the back wall, in every dark corner. Nothing. No sign of anyone hiding. He went back upstairs and tried to calm his son. He said things like, "Maybe you imagined it," or "Maybe one of your brothers and sisters was playing a joke." But the boy's terror did not fade. It shook him from the inside. When Steven asked him what he saw, all the child could say, through tears, was, "I don't know, Daddy, but it was big." A parent knows when their child is lying and when their fear is real. This was real. That night, when the children were in bed, Steven found himself walking again and again to the basement door. He would open it, peer down into the dark, then close it. He could not shake the image of his son's shaking body in wet jeans. Something had happened down there, but he did not yet know what. A child's fear is very hard to fake, especially when it leaves them shaking in their own kitchen in the middle of the day. Whatever lived in that basement had just made its first move. The next strange sign was not a voice or a shadow. It was something simple, something everyone uses every day: lights. One morning, Steven woke up and stepped out of his bedroom. Every light in the house was on. The hallway light, the kitchen light, bathroom lights, bedroom lamps, even the lights they rarely used. He blinked in confusion. He was sure he had turned them all off before going to bed. He always did. He assumed one of the kids must have gotten up during the night and forgotten to switch them off. He walked through the house, turning everything back off. He didn't think much of it. But the next morning, it happened again and again. Soon, it became a pattern. Every day, before leaving for school and work, Steven would walk through the house, switching off every light, every switch, every room. He made sure. The kids would watch him do it. Then, every evening when they returned, the house shone like a beacon. Every window glowed with warm, yellow light. Every single switch was back in the on position. At first, he blamed the children. He scolded them for wasting electricity, for not listening, for ignoring his reminders. But one Friday, he created a test. He and his eldest daughter walked through the entire house before leaving. They checked each room, each lamp, each ceiling fixture, and they spoke the words out loud. Off, off, off. When they left, the house was dark. He was sure. That evening, as they pulled into the driveway, Steven's stomach twisted. The house was blazing with light, every single window, like a jack-o'-lantern grinning in the dark. Someone or something had turned all the lights on again. Inside, the air felt heavier than usual. He moved from room to room, checking for signs of a break-in. No broken windows, no open doors, no scattered belongings. Nothing appeared touched, except for the switches. It felt as if some unseen hand had walked calmly through the house, room by room, flicking everything on. And then stayed. When your house starts acting like it has a mind of its own, maybe it does. In this house, something invisible had access to every room, every night, and every day. The next sign was not just strange, it was physical, a change you could feel in your bones. One very hot summer evening, the air inside the house felt thick and heavy. Steven wiped sweat from his brow as he walked into the living room, where his daughter was sitting. She suddenly shivered, her shoulders hunched. "Daddy, it's cold in here," she whispered. He almost laughed until he felt it too. The temperature dropped sharply, as if someone had opened the door to a walk-in freezer right in front of them. Goosebumps rose along his arms. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. The cold was not normal. It wasn't a draft or an air conditioner kicking on. It came all at once, like a wave. The air felt charged, like there was electricity running through it, like the moment right before lightning strikes. The sudden chill was so intense that tears stung Steven's eyes. For a brief moment, he stood there, unable to move. His heart beat painfully hard in his chest. Then, just as suddenly as it came, the cold vanished. Warmth flooded back into the room. The temperature returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. His daughter stared at him, scared and confused. He forced a smile he did not feel. "It's okay," he told her softly. But as he turned and walked out of the room, his face changed, his eyes darkened. Quietly, under his breath, he mouthed, "What the hell was that?" That was the first time he truly felt the presence. Not just strange events, not just odd patterns. A presence, aware, focused, close. Cold spots, sudden temperature drops. Some say they are classic signs of a haunting. If that is true, then the LaChance house was no longer waking up. It was fully awake. As days turned into weeks, the activity in the house changed from odd to intimate. Shadows no longer stayed where they belonged. In the corners of rooms, in doorways, on the stairs, they seemed to stretch and shift, even when the light sources didn't move. Sometimes, out of the corner of his eye, Steven would see something darker than the shadow around it, a shape. By the time he turned his head to look directly, it was gone. At night, the children began waking up frightened. They said they heard sobbing. Sometimes the sobs sounded like a woman crying, sometimes like a child, always distant, like the sound was coming through the walls or from beneath the floor. Other nights, they heard whispers, angry whispers. They could not make out the words, but the feeling behind them was clear: hatred. The children would crawl into their father's bed, shaking. He held them, stroked their hair, and whispered that it was just bad dreams. But he was not sure anymore. When they finally fell back asleep, he lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling as if unseen eyes were watching him. He began to have nightmares himself. In some, he stood in the house, unable to move, while something stood very close behind him, breathing. In others, he was back in the basement, but this time he knew something waited in the shadows, just outside the edge of his vision. He often woke gasping, heart racing, but the details slipped away like smoke. Only the fear remained. He tried to blame everything on stress. The divorce, the move, the pressure of being a single father. He told himself the kids were picking up on his anxiety, that their minds were filling in the blanks. He wanted very badly to believe it was all in their heads. But the house did not care what he wanted to believe. There is always a point in a haunting where excuses stop working. For this family, that point came one quiet Sunday evening. One Sunday, the family gathered in the living room. They talked about the coming week, school, work, plans. Steven was scheduled to leave for a business trip the next morning. While he was away, the kids would stay at their grandmother's house. For the first time in a while, the mood felt light. And then, right in the middle of a sentence, Steven's attention snapped away from the conversation. A flicker of movement caught his eye at the doorway between the kitchen and the family room. He turned his head. There, standing in the doorway, was a man, or rather, the shape of a man. The figure was tall and completely black, not like a man wearing dark clothes, not like a shadow cast on a wall. It was like a human shape made entirely of swirling darkness, like smoke packed so dense it held the outline of a body. The room itself was well lit. There was nowhere a normal shadow could fall like that. But there it stood, perfectly still, blocking the doorway. Steven froze. His breath caught in his throat. His heart pounded. His mind scrambled to explain what he was seeing. A trick of the light? His imagination? Exhaustion? He looked down for a moment, squeezed his eyes shut, told himself that when he looked up again, it would be gone. He opened his eyes. It was still there. The figure had no clear face, no eyes he could see, but somehow he knew with absolute certainty, that it was looking straight at him. The children continued talking, backs turned, unaware of what was standing just behind them. Then, slowly, the black figure began to move. It glided forward into the family room with slow, deliberate steps that made no sound at all. Its body rippled, the dark smoke inside it twisting and turning, always holding the shape of a man. It stopped only a few feet away from Steven. For a long, terrible moment, the two of them faced each other in silence, one man made of flesh and fear, and one shape made of something else entirely. The room around them seemed to fade. The sound of the children's voices became distant. Time stretched. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished. It did not fade or walk away. It simply was there one moment and gone the next. Steven gasped for air, realizing he had been holding his breath. His hands trembled. His chest hurt from the pounding of his heart. He knew, without any doubt now, that this was not simple stress, not imagination, not the tricks of an old house.